Hi, Dr. Esser, and welcome to the Real Truth About Weight Loss Summit. Thank you so much for being here.
Now, it's my pleasure, Chef AJ. So excited.
I can't wait to talk to you because as a physician who specializes in sports and lifestyle medicine, what effects do you see in your patients that suffer from excess weight in terms of their joints?
That is a great question. And so few people talk about it because, many people talk about weight just purely from the biomechanical perspective. So, for example, we know that a pound above the waist is 3 to 10 pounds on each hip, each knee, each ankle. And so as we've seen this escalation of obesity over the last 3 decades, we certainly have seen a significant increase in the risk of osteoarthritis and now of joint replacements, really increasing the number throughout the US. But there are other aspects in which weight influences our health, and in particular, our musculoskeletal health. And so one of them is really with regards to what are called adipokines. Adipokines are a type of inflammatory cytokine or molecule that's produced by belly fat. And the studies are now showing that as you increase the belly fat, it increases the production of adipokines, and adipokines actually damage the cartilage lining of your joints. So just the fat itself releasing all these hormones inflames the joints and leads to their early demise. Now, in addition, of course, the standard American diet that so many of Americans are afflicted with these days, in and of itself is harmful to the joints and then leads to that increased weight gain. Because as you know, right, high-fat, high-cholesterol meals impair blood flow to tissues. In addition, of course, that nutrient approach as far as high cholesterol, high fat, high salt, et cetera, is very rich in arachidonic acid. And arachidonic acid is the parent molecule for prostaglandins. And prostaglandins are the molecules that cause most of us to have pain in our joints. And so it's interesting, when people adopt a plant-based approach, their joint pain improves by 60 to 80%, even before they begin to lose weight. And that's what I love to see in my clinic. As people make intentional changes, their joints feel better. Their whole life and health improves.
That's incredible. So many people at a younger age now seem to be having these knee replacements and hip replacements. Are our joints supposed to wear out?
Absolutely not. And what we see in the literature is it says that if you are carrying excess weight, so if your BMI is in the obese range, you increase your likelihood of requiring a hip replacement, for example, by 200%. And if you are obese at the age of 18, you increase that risk by approximately 500%. So really, this is why your summit and what you're doing is so crucial and so important, because we need to transform lives. And those of you who are listening out there, this is the ticket. This is the direction. And that's why all of us are here to support you in your journey of health.
Wow. Why does the excess weight cause early osteoarthritis and joint degeneration?
Yeah, so I'd probably say three things. One, biomechanics. We are machines in many ways, aren't we? And so if you overload the machine, it has to work harder. So imagine putting lots of extra weight in your car, it's going to wear down the tread on your tires sooner. Same idea for our joints. That's the biomechanical concept. Number two is the fact, as I mentioned, that the belly fat releases hormones that circulate through your bloodstream and damage your joints. And number three is also it impairs, as I mentioned, blood flow to the very tissues that require it so desperately. And it's not just the joints. So it's fascinating. Studies show if you have elevated cholesterol, for example, in your bloodstream, you're more likely to tear your rotator cuff or your Achilles tendon, all these different major tendons in the body. And actually, if you end up having surgery and you have high cholesterol, you're more likely to re-tear those same tendons. So it's at the heart of it. This is about perfusion, right? This is about blood flow. So the body demands, it thrives off of good blood flow. So whether it be the brain, right, and cognitive function, whether it be our kidneys, whether it be our joints, whether it be the heart itself, it's so crucial that the food you're putting in is opening up the blood vessels, right? And we know those foods are going to be those phytonutrient, those micronutrient dense foods that love us back, right? The deep purples and reds and greens that are really a celebration on your plate as well. So they feel good inside and they look good when you eat them too.
Well, so many people have chronic back pain or joint pain and they go to their doctor and they're offered a pill or a procedure, but they're never even asked about their diet.
It is tragic, isn't it? So before it's interesting. So I come from a strange past. My grandfather for 65 years ran a facility, a fasting facility, a nutrient detoxification place, 10 acres of land loaded with organic mango trees and all the rest. And about 30 people at a time would stay there and reverse chronic disease. And he ran that till he was in his 90s, about 30,000 patients that he cataloged. And I grew up there. It was a land of miracles, person after person coming and getting healthy. So when I went off to medical school, and then I went to residency at Harvard and fellowship at Mayo, et cetera, I assumed everybody would be on board with this. But then there was no conversation about it. There was no talk about it. So then I thought, well, there must not be evidence for this, right? Maybe it's all voodoo. But then I started researching the literature. And there was study after study after study done in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, I mean, on and on and on, demonstrating the power of this approach. And I learned that sadly, the reality is you don't make money as a physician off of just teaching people about good nutrition. And so as a result, remember, in medical school, doctors learn what we will get reimbursed for later on. Because it does a doctor no good to teach him something or her something that we can't make a living from. So in medical school, we get about 4 hours or so of actual nutrition education in 4 years of education. And most of those years or hours, I should say, of education on nutrition are about diseases we'll never see, like things like scurvy and beriberi and marasmus, instead of learning what we should, which is, here's diabetes. Let's talk about how we can prevent it through food and how we can reverse it through food. Here's heart disease. Let's talk about why it really happens. So you're absolutely on target. And that's something that and I know a lot of your folks that have been on with you are trying to change. We're trying to impact the medical system. So hopefully, when everybody goes to, if they need a doctor in the future, because we all have issues at some point, perhaps, that the doctor will say, here's what we can do for you. Here's what you can do. And here's what I can do too. Yeah.
Wow. I wish everyone had a doctor like you, Dr. Esser, because I think back in my life where I've been to specifically like orthopedic doctors for things like back pain or knee pain. And I don't ever remember any of them saying to me, to lose weight. And now you're saying that for every pound of additional body weight, it's like 10 pounds of pressure to your knee and to all your other joints. Do you think doctors don't recommend that because they just don't believe that people will do it? Because they must know what you know about how excess weight affects orthopedic type problems.
I think what I've learned along the way is that doctors are human, right? Just like anyone else. And the majority of us physicians really don't want to face confrontation. And when you bring up to a patient something with as personal as their weight, let's say, sometimes it creates confrontation, it creates conflict, and it takes longer. You have to love them. You have to affirm them. You have to spend time with them, develop that relationship so you can work with them. And the other problem is if I say to you as a patient, the extra 30 pounds, let's say you're carrying is adding to the burden of arthritis in your joint. Well, the next thing is, so how can you help me, doc? Right? If you're really going to say that's a problem. So it is easier. It is simpler for a physician just to say, here's an injection, right? And walk out the door. And so it does take time. It does take energy. But the beauty of it, as a physician, I can tell you, there is nothing more gratifying. Like I saw a guy the other day, he came to see me and he said, Doc, I've been told I need a knee replacement. I'm 54 years old. I've never had a problem with my knee before. They're telling me it's bone on bone. What else can I do, right? I'm too young. And I looked at him. We went through his medical chart. He was in the obese category with his body mass index, carrying quite a bit of extra belly fat. He had type 2 diabetes. He had high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And I said, you know what? I said, I want 6 weeks of your life. Will you give me 6 weeks? That's all I'm asking from you. I'm not asking you to join a cult. I'm not asking you for anything crazy. Just 6 weeks. And he said, all right, I'll do it. So he and I sat down. We put together a nutrient-dense, calorie-poor, right, sort of protocol, lots of fruits and veggies, all the good stuff. And he did it for 6 weeks. And, he came back to see me at 6 weeks. He was 28 pounds down. He was off his metformin. He was off 2 of his blood pressure medications. And his knee pain was 70% better. He was blown away. And he wrote to me this big testimony. I mean, it was just exciting. We were high-fiving and hugging. It was delightful. And he said, you know what? I feel so good. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep going with this approach. And he's still thriving, which is awesome.
That's incredible because you said he was obese. Even a 28-pound weight loss helped his symptoms.
Yes. And that speaks to the fact that it's not just the biomechanics. It's not just a pound above 3 to 10 below. It's also that perfusion, that blood flow, right? It's also the inflammatory molecules. Because remember, not only is our body, right, forming these adipokines. But remember, the food we eat, like we said, the arachidonic acid, prostaglandins. Then you've got the whole uric acid, which is, of course, toxic to the joints. But also, there's far more than we fully understand with regards to these little nutrients that suck up and absorb a lot of these inflammatory cells. And so for each person, their body's response is different. And the majority of people, it is just a beautiful one. And that's what I love to see, because now I know you know, Chef, and I'm going to say to all our viewers out there is that these great studies at Johns Hopkins, and they looked at what is called brachial artery sort of dilation. And that's the big artery that's in your arm here. And they would test how well blood flow could flow through it. Then what they would do is they'd feed healthy volunteers either a high-fat, high-cholesterol meal or a plant-dense meal. The single high-fat, high-cholesterol meal would impair the ability of their blood vessel to dilate by 50% for 4 hours. That means a big artery was shrunken down, unable to open up to the demands it needed by half for 4 hours. So in the same way, when you feed that person a beautiful deep green, deep purple, deep red, all that, those beets and kale and collards and all this, it actually dilates and opens up their blood vessels. So now for the first time in years, a person's joints are getting good blood flow, all the oxygen and the nutrients. And that's what I think a lot of what happens.
Well, that's great, because from what I'm understanding, just losing the weight isn't enough. You want to have the correct diet so that you can have this blood flow, which if their doctor did tell them to lose weight, it could be any diet, and that's just not enough.
Absolutely. That's where it breaks my heart when I see people, for example, go get gastric bypass or do other invasive procedures, and perhaps they lose a lot of weight, but their body is still not receiving the rich perfusion, the micronutrients, which are so essential for health of every body part, in particular, as we've talked about, the joints, the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments. Yeah.
That's incredible. Increased blood flow is really the answer, whether it's impotence or joint pain.
Preach it. That's it.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of preaching it, you tell me how fingers, feet, and forks are the master levels of your health destiny, or excuse me, levers.
Yeah, people forget how powerful they are. And that's all of you viewers out there. That's the big thing I want you to walk away from my talk. It's just saying you are powerful. And every decision you make, every thought you think, every, forkful of something that you put into your mouth, every step that you're taking really is building your health for the next year, 5 years, 10 years, and on. So you want to remember that your cells are constantly regenerating and changing. So truly, you are the master of your health destiny. As they classically like to say, right? Health comes from healthy living for the majority of us, the majority of time. And so, I love the stories, for example, of the Pima Indians, where we know half of them live, unfortunately, in reservations in Arizona, half are free living in Mexico. And these are the classic thrifty gene hypothesis population, right? That some people are good at holding on to calories. And yet what we see, for example, is those in the reservation that are eating more of the standard American diet have a rate of diabetes that is 50% of the whole tribe. And yet free living in Mexico, eating largely corn as their primary source of calories and hiking the mountains, the rates of type 2 diabetes are less than 8%. So talk about radically changing the expression of your genes, which all of you out there should go and read more about on epigenetics, right? How the decisions you make, the fingers, feet, and forks, what you do radically changes the expression of your genes. So truly, you can't change your genes, but you can change how they're expressed. Or the classic phrase, you can nurture nature, right? Which I love.
So our genes haven't changed that much in the last 20 years, but there is now an obesity epidemic. What's changed?
Well, we have changed as a society in how we are living life. And in some ways, it's about getting back to the basics. You're seeing behind me a little picture of part of our ranch where we live, and that's what we're trying to do ourselves. But each and every one of you has a way that you can get back to the simple life. And that's at the heart of this, getting back to movement as medicine, getting back to food as medicine, right? Getting back to the basic tenets of health that have been preached for millennia, that food, that exercise, that sleep, that emotional poise, that these are the foundation of your health. And what we've begun to forget in the last 30 years is, I'm a human. What do humans eat? What do humans do? What are we intended for? We're so busy in our consumeristic, sort of sucked into a world where it's just busy, 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 go, 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 and fast food this, fast food that, fast this, etc. We're not stopping and pausing and being present, that whole intentional living. And that's what we want to get back to, because we give our bodies what it really requires is intended for the most basic essentials. Health erupts. Health comes out. Our bodies are craving that.
Wow.
So yeah, getting back to the basics, that's the heart of this.
I've heard of food as medicine, but I've never heard movement as medicine. Why is that so important? Because I think it's easier sometimes to get people to eat right than it is to move their body. Is it necessary for weight loss? Is it necessary for health?
Yes, great question. I would say, I guess, 80% of weight loss really is the nutritional aspect. And then 20% of weight loss ends up being movement. What I will say is they go hand in hand. They shouldn't be seen in opposition. It's, oh, I'm an exerciser. Oh, I'm a nutrition person. We don't want to be like Jim Fixx, the father of American running, who said, well, I can eat all the hot dogs and everything I want. And then here at the age of 50 something had a heart attack and died. Yet he would go out and run marathons constantly, right? We're not in conflict, exercise and nutrition. They're the two pillars of health, the two foundations. And so we want to make sure that we are cultivating both in our lives. So, for example, you can eat all the excellent food you want, but that's not going to give you the strength to hike a mountain or to play 3 sets of double tennis or to pick up your grandchild safely and carry them across, the driveway. So you really need to remember that excellent nutrition prepares your body to then allow it to be strengthened well so you can live your most vibrant life. So I think they work well hand in hand, but exercise by itself absolutely should not be seen as a primary weight loss tool. It should be something that's fun and playful and enjoyable, that you're getting out there. It allows you to have socialization, right, with other people and participate in things that perhaps you enjoy. I say it's funny, some people, I'll see it all the time on Facebook, right? They're part of a running club or whatever, and they'll post how they just did their run, and now they're at the bar having burgers, fries, and beers. And I'm going, you're missing the point, right? You're missing the whole point of this health transition. So the two go well together, but nutrition, I think, is the primary for weight loss and overall feeding the cells. And then exercise should be seen for function and performance for long term. And we don't want to forget, as all of us age, right, we tend to lose muscle mass. That's called sarcopenia. So it is important that we're keeping in mind that we want to keep our bones strong and our muscles strong. And that really comes with both excellent nutrition, but also making sure that we're getting that exercise regularly.
I've actually heard some women say, well, I don't want to get too thin and get osteoporosis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, so it's so crucial. If you look at the studies, in fact, resistance strength training done on a regular basis can neutralize that loss that comes with age, and for women, of course, with menopause, et cetera. So crucial that we're remembering the power of exercise in our lives and where it really shines the most. Now, of course, studies also say that it has a therapeutic effect for so many other aspects, cancer risk and the rest. So every day, add a little bit of movement into your life to maintain this classic car that we're all given at some point. It becomes more classic than others, but making sure that we're maintaining the vehicle.
The patient that you mentioned that gave you 6 weeks that lost the 28 pounds, did you actually start him on some kind of a movement program at the same time, or just asked him to eat a plant-based diet?
That was purely nutrition. And so what my experience is, if the bigger the changes nutritionally, right, and the more engaged the individual is who does it, boy, beautiful. Just the weight loss happens on its own. And that's what I love about that calorie density model, isn't it? Right? I say you can look, for example, at a free range horse. They are never overweight. Yet all day, all night, they're eating. Like you're looking out your window going, please stop chewing. I'm trying to sleep here. And they're still eating. But what are they doing? They're eating grass. And if you take that same beautiful equine character, put it into a barn, and feed it lots of rolled oats and barley, it can get a little plump, right? Because you went up the calorie density model. One of my phrases that I love is the following, is I say, we need to get back to loving food, right? And love to eat. We should love to eat. We've created this artificial complexity, right, with our relationship with food, which no other creature on earth has. So, I joke, there's some banana trees over here to my left I'm looking at. It makes me think of the monkey. A monkey, when it's hungry, goes to the banana stalk, let's say, finds the ripe bananas, eats all of them that it can squish into its belly until it's bloated. It falls asleep, wakes up, poops, and does it again. It never walks up to the banana stalk and say, I'm going to be good today and just have 2 bananas, right? But at the heart of it, the monkey is eating what it's intended for. And that's where we have to get back to, that we as humans, of course, are intended for fruits and vegetables and whole grains and tubers and all these delightful things. We're not intended for all of these hyper palatable food-like substances, these artificial, fake processed things that are so calorie dense. And we're not intended for all the meat and the dairy and all these. We're not intended for that. So if you're going to eat those foods you're not even intended for, yes, you have to control yourself. You have to be very careful. You have to avoid and all the rest. That's not living. That's not how humans or any creature was intended. We're intended to celebrate life and its vitality and be reaching for the foods that love us back. That's it.
Right. Have any of your patients ever say, well, doctor, I hardly eat anything. How can I weigh this much?
Yes, all the time. And so at the heart of it for me, when somebody says that is I go, you're probably right. You probably do hardly eat anything. But what you're eating are things that don't love you back. Let's talk about that more, right? And making sure that the first thing I love patients to do is really objectify it, right? And don't change what they're eating at all if they don't want to. Just write it out. What do you eat every day? And then we can actually look at it with that objective information and make some decisions with regards to their health. But yes, I see patients all the time frustrated saying that phrase, and they're right. Many of them do hardly eat anything. And the reality is, I want them to eat more, but more of the best stuff, right?
Right. Eat more, way less.
Love it.
Absolutely. So do you believe in what a lot of our speakers are saying, or like limiting the feeding window, maybe eating more of your calories earlier in the day, or just as long as you're eating the right food, you'll be fine?
So as I mentioned, my grandfather, for all those decades, ran a fasting facility, right? To, therapeutic water fasting for either days to weeks to months. And right now we're seeing a real trend, kind of a bit of a fad almost of this concept of intermittent fasting. And I think that there's no doubt our bodies are intended to have a period wherein we don't have a lot of calories going into us, because it does take a lot of work, a lot of energy for our body to digest and assimilate all of that food. However, I'm not convinced that there has to be some scientific principle of saying, well, I'm going to have 50% here and 20% here and 30% of my calories here and then a big window. Again, I've never met another animal that does that lives out in nature and thrives. So I'm not quite sure why we think we're unique in that way. So I think if you're eating the right food, the food that loves you back, right? We're intended for, I think you should eat it in abundance and in celebration and go from there. Now, do I think that, for example, eating within a couple hours of sleep, probably not the most ideal time, because you want to give your gut a chance to rest more so that you can sleep through the night and not be up with all of the gurgling and movement that might be going on in your intestinal tract. So, yes.
Very good. Getting back to exercise for a minute, many people think that will kickstart their metabolism. Is that true? And how do you take somebody that's had a period or a lifetime of inactivity and get them moving in a safe way?
The studies show the following. If you randomize people to just exercise, just nutrition, or exercise and nutrition, the exercise and nutrition does a little bit better than just the nutrition alone, but not a lot. And the exercise, of course, does less well with weight loss as compared to excellent nutrition. So for me, yes, exercise boosts the metabolism a little bit, purely in large part, of course, because it's also burning more calories and enhancing the activity of our innate cortisol system and all the rest. But again, if you are making meaningful changes with your nutrition and doing excellent nutrition, the sort of stuff, Chef, that you always talk about and have so wonderfully written up in your books, etc., people will see the weight take care of itself over time. However, again, I think exercise is essential for good health and function long term. And so when people come and let's say they have a malady or a disability or chronic pain, what we do is work within the windows of the pain-free zone to gently get them moving again. So whether that be working with a physical therapist, a personal trainer, a swim instructor, a Pilates instructor who's well-trained, or whatever it might be. I mean, I have exercises where people do seated on the couch with some little cans of pineapple in their hand, right? Doing little simple exercises. At the heart of it is starting somewhere and then be slowly increasing the demands on the body. We're not looking for you to go out tomorrow and run a half marathon or anything of that kind. We're looking to start you in a place and then gently move you. And this concept of muscle confusion and challenging the body in different ways is really good because it challenges the brain in different ways. So we want always to be getting the nervous system, the musculoskeletal system, to really be a little challenged, not to just get in one rut and stay there the rest of your life, but rather maybe every couple months, try something a little different. So my wife, for example, in the past has been a yoga and small group instructor. And I always hated taking her classes because I'd have to do things I wasn't accustomed to. And that's actually a good thing, both for our bodies and for our brains. So in a pain-free zone, that's where you start, and then gently begin to add on a little bit more. As far as the food, nutrition, exercise, and weight loss piece, is that when you move a little and you're sweating a little, guess what? That goes better with a salad, right? As compared to you're all sweaty. It's not like you turn and go, hey, I want a cigarette and a steak. I mean, it just doesn't go well. Yeah.
Why is exercise good for our brains?
So exercise does a ton of stuff, which is really cool. Number one is perfusion. It begins to open up and jack open the blood vessels that go to the brain. So your brain gets more blood flow. That means more oxygen and more of the nutrients that it's delivered in there. Number two is exercise actually demands from our brains often, especially if it's new exercise or different things, or let's say yoga poses you're not accustomed to, etc. It forces what's called arborization or neural plasticity. What that means is that, so for example, let's say you walk through the forest one day and it's this little path and you're clearing branches, etc. Well, if you keep going just down that one path, it gets pretty wide, it gets pretty open. That's your one path. That's all you've got. But if every time you're going a slightly different way, you're experiencing more in different places. The term arborization is from the word arbor, like a tree. And the idea is that the nerves in the brain begin to grow out and branch out to more different connections to different parts of other areas of the brain. And so as a result, you have a richer neural network. The same idea as in the past we used to talk about, we still do, that doing things like Sudoku or crossword puzzles is good to make your brain richer, or learning a new language or learning a new instrument, because all these challenge your brain in new ways that cause it to grow and be more enhanced. So now you're starting from a higher point, even if you begin to have some cognitive decline once you get in your 70s, 80s, or 90s. Yeah.
That's incredible. A lot of people say they just don't have the motivation to exercise. How do we get them started? And does it help to have a buddy?
I like people to sit down and write out their growth, their goals, the reality today, the obstacles, and their will. And so if at the heart of this, you go, well, hey, my goal is to be blank. My goal is to be healthier. My goal is to shed some weight. My goal is to reduce my risk of disease. My goal is to be able to look good in this pair of jeans. My goal is whatever your goal is, all you have to do is sit and say, is exercise part of achieving that goal? And if it is, all of a sudden, it's not just about motivation to do it. It's about this is just what you need to do to achieve your goal. Now, you can create fun and playfulness about it, but think about it this way. So a guy says, or a girl says, hey, I want to go run a marathon one day. Well, what is that going to take? It's going to take them going out and gently walking every day and then beginning to jog a little and moving further and further. Or let's say they say, I want to get a master's in business. Well, what are they going to have to do? They're going to have to find the schools, right? Submit the applications, go to classes, do all these things. So there may not be motivation every day to go to their business classes, but they want the end goal, right? They want that MBA. So we've got to make sure that we don't get hung up on not feeling it emotionally on a given day, but rather that rational part of our brain, that left side of the brain that can say to our right side, hey, right side, I know you're looking for fun and dancing in the moonlight, and sometimes you're going to have that with your girlfriend, et cetera, going out and doing fun things, exercising together. But some days it's just, I'm going to do this because it's part of my goal. I'm going to achieve my goal. Now, you can make it fun and playful, obviously, by inviting other friends, by joining a group, a walking group, or a line dance club, or going and finding a gym buddy, or whatever it might be. There's so many ways of making it more fun and playful. But not every day is going to be fun and playful. And some days you're going to go, the same with our food, right? Is some days, no matter what food you're eating, you're going to wake up and go, oh, man, I don't like my food today. Whether it's the standard American diet or whether it's pure plant-based nutrition. So at the heart of it, some days it's going, Yeah, but this is helping me achieve the real goal I want. And that's one of the things that I've done more and more now in my brain is start saying to myself, self, what do you really want? And self has said back to me, I want to be healthy. I want to be vital. So that why? So I can be a good husband, a good father, so I can be a good physician, a leader for other people, an encourager, a motivator. So what does that require? So when I wake up in the morning and the last thing I want to do is roll on the ground to do my core program and my stretches, I say, self, you said your goal. And so you've got to do it. And you just go do it. And after a while, it becomes a habit. Just like the habit was not to do it, now the habit is to do it. And pretty soon you're just walking down that journey. And every day is just you living out who you say you want to be. And that's the heart of it. We've got to change. In here, some people begin to again and again sidetrack themselves. They say, I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not motivated enough. I've never been able to do it. And I'm here today to tell you, you are able, motivated, capable, all of those things. But you have to tell yourself you are first. And that's the thing. You can begin to change neurally in the brain the way you perceive yourself. And that's so essential. So that's why it's so important to think about how's my self-talk, right? Who do I surround myself with? Do they support me, encourage me, or are they undermining my success? All of those things. Yeah.
So many people seem to have such a complicated relationship with food. Some think that they're addicted to certain foods. How should this relationship be?
This relationship should be romance. This relationship should be celebration. This relationship should be a party in your mouth. I mean, that's at the heart of this, because we have begun in our society over the last number of decades to create this complexity, this hatred, this love affair. You know, 1 minute, it's like almost like we're being adulterous. And that's not it. This should be about loving the food you eat and the food loving you back and celebrating it every day. Some of us truly, and some of you out there may truly have a true food addiction. And that is real. And you need to acknowledge that. You need to reach out for resources, right? You need to have that support group and that support system. This is so essential that you recognize that that is something that you are struggling with. And if that's the case, then you need to be able to have a mentor like Chef AJ and the like to be able to support you day in and day out as you're going through a quote detoxification phase and then a rebuilding phase and then a maintenance phase for long term. So food, and then not being angry at yourself or frustrated with yourself or thinking you're a failure in any way if you go out and eat non-health promoting foods. And now do you hear what I just said there? I said non-health promoting foods. I didn't say good or bad. And all of you watching out there, I actually want you to take that lingo, any judgment, any morality about food out of your conversations with yourself or with other people. Because you know what happens? If you begin to say, oh, I'm so bad, I ate such and such, it almost makes it as though it's a temptation, as though you really want it, as though it's a, some desire that you're not allowing yourself to have. Instead, you can strip away that morality, you can strip away that sense and just say, I ate some non-health promoting food. And so my whole point is, so what's your point? So now go eat some health promoting food instead of going, oh, I'm so bad, I ate off the program. And so, okay, so let's keep eating healthy food, right? So recognize, learn who you are. That's at the heart of this. Are you truly struggling with food addiction, and why, right? Are you struggling with food addiction because of abuse, because of depression, because of anxiety, because of other things that you've dealt with in your life or maybe not dealt with and that still need to be resolved as well? Because food sometimes, of course, is a reflection of something deeper in our hearts, in our spirits that is not being fully dealt with, addressed, etc. So get out, make sure you're doing other things too. Here's one thing I've learned along the way. Food and all the rest and health is not the end goal. The food and health are to allow you to go out and live your most vibrant life, right? That's what we really want. We want you to be healthy and vital so that now you can go out and be the best version of yourself in society, in your home, in your families, in your personal relationships. That's at the heart of this. It's not, the end goal is not, hey, I lost weight. Hey, look at me now, I can fit in these jeans. Hey, I reduced my disease risk. It's, wow, I'm now healthy, so I don't have to focus on all this other stuff. And now I can go out and live this version of me, the best version of you. That's what we're looking for.
Right. And when people get healthy, they often lose weight as a consequence.
Yes, absolutely. They just go hand in hand. And uh, so it's wonderful to see, as that just occurs naturally and fluidly.
Why is it, Dr. Esser, that so many people seem to know what to do, but they just have a lot of trouble doing it?
I asked myself that question years ago because I always thought, wow, if we just knew what to do, people would do it. But when you really look at that behavioral change pyramid, in which a person succeeds in achieving their goal, knowledge and understanding of the risks and benefits of something is only one tiny little brick, one tiny little block in achieving that goal. So all of our social norms, our cultural norms, our habits, our personal addictions, all of these other parts, for many people, are much bigger than just the knowledge. I think the knowledge is essential so that you understand why you're doing what you're doing. It's kind of interesting. It's like a relationship with someone, a long-term committed relationship. It's, in my opinion, does the best if the two people are bound together by multiple different connections. So let's say they love how each other looks. Well, that may fade over time, but maybe they'll still love that the other person loves to play crossword or does this or plays tennis, etc. They have more connections. And so when it comes to our relationship with food and achieving our goal, we want to understand all the different aspects, how it influences us personally, how it influences socially, how it influences the environment and planetary health, how it influences animal health, etc. I mean, on and on. There's so many aspects. And once you understand all of that, that's beautiful. But now we need to go and drill deeper to the mind, to the spirit, to all of the other stuff. That's where I think true change can occur. I grew up knowing all this stuff, living it out, right? Never had meat in my entire life until well into my 20s, et cetera, and still don't now at all. And so when you think about all this, it's like, yet for me, one of the biggest changes happened in medical school, where I begin to rewrite here, where it was, no, I don't want any of those foods. I don't want the processed stuff. I don't want all that. I want true, healthy, health-promoting food. That's what I want. It began to change in here internally. And all of a sudden, for me, it all just began to fall into place.
Yeah. What is true health-promoting food that'll enable us to live our best healthy life and lose weight if we need to?
I think it's the food that our bodies are most intended for. We've got these wonderful grinding, reciprocating molar teeth. We've got weak stomach acid, long intestines. We lack uricase. I mean, pretty much we have no claws. We have opposable thumbs. Very clearly, we're far more herbivorous than we are carnivorous. And so truly at the heart of success and food loving you back are the dynamic, colorful, energy-rich, living foods, all of those vegetables and the fruits and the beans, rice and the potatoes and all that good stuff. That's what should be on our plates every day, all day.
I agree. When it comes to healthy living or losing weight, a lot of people use an analogy of being on a wagon or on the wagon or falling off a wagon. Do you think that's useful terminology? Because I don't even know where the wagon is.
That's the problem, isn't it? Because the idea of being on a wagon suggests that somebody's on a moving vehicle. And if you've ever been on a moving truck, like as a kid hanging on the back or something, if you fell off, the truck left. You were stuck in the dust there. And maybe you were crying, you come back and get me, right? You were depressed. Yeah, wow. And the only way to get back on was to either sprint like crazy, some huge force that you had to put in, or for it to come back and get you. A very passive concept. You were just sat there crying until it came and got you again. The reality is, and I want to be very clear, none of you are on a moving vehicle. And if you're watching this while you're moving, you probably shouldn't. And hopefully you're not driving at least. So we're not on a moving vehicle when it comes to our health. At the heart of it, we are on a journey. And this journey is through, let's say, a beautiful parkland, a beautiful national forest. And there are going to be lows in the forest, dips in the valley. There are going to be highs with gorgeous views. It's going to be amazing sometimes. And it's going to be wet and foggy and drenchy and unpleasant at others. But imagine you're walking down that trail and you step in a little pool of mud. You don't throw yourself in the pool of mud and go, I fell in the mud, I fell in the mud. No, you get right back and keep walking. And what happens to the mud? That may have been some food you, quote, shouldn't have eaten, etc. The mud dries on your boot, and as you keep walking, it falls off, it flakes off, it goes away. The same idea if you're walking through a tight, narrow area where family and friends are pushing on you to make certain decisions that might not be the best. And you feel the briar catch you in the leg because you just slipped the donut down. It doesn't mean you throw yourself into the briar bush and start screaming that you're in the briar bush. I fell down the mountain in the briar bush. No, you whack the briar off your leg and you keep walking down your journey, right? So you get home, you have the big plate of salad, you have the healthy food, and you move on. That's it. So the moving concept, this idea of being on a moving vehicle, absolutely. I think it's not a good example. And we should stop using our vocabulary and instead say, I am on a health journey. And that tells the truth. There'll be great, exciting moments, and there'll be depressing, challenging moments as well. But you can do it. And that's what a journey is all about, right? It's like, again, you go to that national park. Boy, you might be a little worn out going up that hill, right? And then you get to the top, and you're like, wow, this is worth it. So you go back to the doctors, and they go, or your nutritionist, or whoever's working with you, and you go, wow, I've lost 30 pounds. I'm down another 15. You just made another little mountaintop here. And then guess what? There might be another little valley ahead, but you're just going to keep on going like that. And we're all human. That's important to remember. And so you and I will face disease of some form at some kind in our life, right? Whether it be trauma, a bad car accident or a fall or a broken bone, or whether it be some rare cancer, who knows what. But what we want to do is reduce those risks as much as possible and reduce the burden of weight on our bodies that just fatigues and wears our joints, our muscles, our tendons, our ligaments, and of course increases those risks of all the major cancers and heart disease and stroke and the rest. So, but yes, no moving vehicles, a journey, and thank you for letting me join your journey today, actually.
Oh my God, it's a privilege talking to you. So many people, though, whether there's a wagon or no wagon, when they have a misstep, they beat themselves up and they don't take the next step. You know what I'm saying? They eat a cookie, and instead of having healthy food, they're like, well, I blow it. I'll just eat the whole box. How do we change their mindset to like what you said is just, okay, oops, I had a cookie. Now I'm going to have some kale.
And so I think there's probably two different people, aren't there? There's the true food addict who, like the alcoholic, they have a sip of that beer. The next thing you know, they're out, left their job, left their wife, left everything, right? And are now, it's going to take detox. It's going to take a real intensive moment. And those people have to be so careful and so conscientious, at least I would say for the first 6 months to a year, if not longer, and some perhaps the rest of their life. And then there are the other folks that don't have a true food addiction, but rather just have been in bad habits, poor patterns, so on and so forth. And for those individuals, I think at the heart of it is making sure that the majority of your life is already set up in such a way that it's channeling you in a very positive way. So you are familiar, of course, with that concept, that psychological perspective of channel factors, right? And why does a river flow downhill? Well, gravity's pulling it. Why does it go around a big mountain? Because the mountain's bigger than the river, and so the river has to go around. So imagine that your life, your health journey is like that river. And you making a misstep is like a branch or a log rolling into the river. Well, if you just allow your current, which is one of health, to keep going, you're just going to sweep that branch along. But if you put something in there and then misperceive it as though it's a huge dam that's going to suddenly redirect you completely, it will become that for you. The reality is the following. We are dopaminergic people, aren't we? We are intended to seek dopamine, that feel-good hormone that is very normal, but we want to find dopamine in many, many places, not just in these hyper-palatable foods. So some people are not filling their dopamine tank enough with healthy personal relationships, with music, with spirituality, with massage, with exercise, which of course does release dopamine too. We didn't talk about that. All these other aspects. So when they have that cookie, they're like, I finally got some love, right? I finally got some dopamine. I mean, we see in our society right now an epidemic of suicide and depression and anxiety. I think that's because not enough people are hugging each other. Not enough people are loving each other in honest, open dialogue of compassion and communication. And so if that person eats the cookie, they get that dopamine, and they may actually really just want more dopamine. And they think it only comes from that cookie. And that's where they go, this way. Instead of saying, you know what? I can get dopamine in so many other areas, and being aware of why they ate that cookie, right? Because, I can speak for myself. is that when I'm sleep deprived, when I'm fatigued, when I'm stressed at work, when I'm stressed by politics and the economy or whatever else, I'm more likely to reach for hyper palatable foods. Even if in my house that might be some medjool dates and peanut butter, right? It's still that more calorie dense foods than I am to reach for a big thing of kale with some balsamic vinegar dressing and whatever. So we have to be careful and make sure we're filling our bodies and our minds and our souls with all of that other stuff. So that if we make that quote misstep, so what? My health journey, my channel of my river is just going to keep going. And it's going to be one of health. So that's where it's so essential that people are real. Meaning, are they being honest? In their home, what's in their pantry? What's in their refrigerator? Do they eat every meal out? Right? Or do they eat some meals at home and so on and so forth? Because they have to be real about that. Like, so for example, let's say I went and ate a donut, which I don't do and haven't for decades. But let's say I ate a donut. And then I got home and now my sugar was kicked up and it was like, ooh, I want more sugar. This is what my body was saying. Again, the least, quote, healthy thing I have in my house are some dried fruit and nuts. That's it. So I've channeled myself, right? I've set myself up to achieve the goal that I want. That's essential. Absolutely essential.
Well, it's good to know that there's other places to get dopamine other than food, but it just seems like it takes a lot less energy to eat a cookie than it does to lace up your sneakers and go for a walk.
I love it. Well, and maybe for that individual, there's so many ways we can go around that, right? Whether it be, well, if you have the finances, I'm going to pay for a massage, right? Or maybe I've got a stationary bike in the house I'd be willing to sit on. Or, maybe I'd be willing to do some deep breathing yoga or pull out a book of spiritual readings and spend some time with. Those all release dopamine in the brain and serotonin and help us to kind of reconstitute and center ourselves. And, it's interesting, though, that little bit of movement, just, maybe it's turning some music on and raising the roof and dancing around the house and being silly like we were when we were 5 and 6 years old, right? And that's what we've lost touch with, of just being comfortable, being human.
That's great. Yeah, music I heard actually does release dopamine, and
Yes.
that's terrific. So somebody that's willing to go on a whole food plant-based diet, or maybe is on one and has lost weight, but still are having these joint problems, are there things they can do other than pills and procedures? I hear you're doing things with stem cells now.
That's right. There's so many different options. So don't forget joints. Not only is it the weight above and that influences the joint itself, then we have, of course, all of the muscle balance across the joint. So are things too flexible? Are they inadequately strong? So on and so forth. And so excellent physical therapy, home exercises can help stabilize joints and reduce pain. Add to that, then we have all the wonderful supplements, things like turmeric and boswellia and ginger and all of these that help reduce inflammation and pain. And then, yes, there also are very exciting cutting-edge procedures I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years using things like platelet-rich plasma, where we take platelets out of a person's bloodstream, spin them down, and take all those growth factors and put them in joints, or even the use of human-derived stem cells from the autologous, meaning from the same person, taken out of their bone marrow, and then concentrating their stem cells and injecting them in the joints. And if you look at the data on this, very exciting as far as pain reduction and functional improvements. So, to me, the two go hand in hand. The majority of my patients who choose to do what's called orthobiologics or biologic treatments, I put them first on a whole food plant-based program for several weeks to wake up the body, improve blood flow, reduce inflammation, reduce weight, and then we move ahead with the wonderful stem cells or platelet-rich plasma injections. Yes.
That's terrific. Not only do these procedures sound promising and a lot less invasive, but the fact that you're just putting your patients on these programs, the dietary program, before you're doing the procedure.
Yes.
Imagine if heart surgeons did that.
Oh, can you imagine?
They might not have to do the procedure. That's fantastic. Do you ever have a patient come to you that knows they need to lose weight, but they've pretty much given up hope that they could ever lose weight? What have you said to those patients?
The first thing I do is try to hug them and love them, because they're not right. You're wrong. You can. And I want to be your friend. I want to support you. I want to love you. But we need to redevelop their confidence and belief in themselves and their belief in their own potential, because you can. And just, I think sometimes what we as healthcare practitioners need to do more of is love people. And that's really at the heart of it. And because we might be the only one to do so. So remember, if you have a friend or a family member who's struggling themselves, reach out.
Wow.
Make sure they know you love them.
Gosh, I wish I had a doctor like you. That would be
Try
amazing.
to live up to that.
Yeah. So, Dr. Esser, what is the real truth about weight loss?
The real truth about weight loss is that you are the most powerful person, and all the decisions you make matter, and your feelings, your emotions, your perspectives matter. And the real secret and truth about weight loss is that you can do it, and you are capable. That's pretty much it.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Esser.
Pleasure to join you. Good luck, everyone. Take care.